After an 18-hour flight to my sister's wedding, my own father blocked my path at the entrance. "You're not on the list. You need to leave." That was the moment I knew something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose how much of their damage you're willing to carry. My name is Alara. I'm 33, and I work as a risk analyst for a global firm in London. Every day, I scrutinize contracts, looking for the one subtle flaw that could unravel an entire deal. It's a skill I didn't realize I'd been honing my entire life just by surviving my own household. Growing up, our home was like a stage with two very different acts playing out under the same roof. There was my sister, Chloe's act, the one filled with new dresses, a shiny used car at 16, and a father who called her his little champion without a hint of irony. And then there was my act, the one where I learned to fill out my own school forms, worked a part-time job to buy my own clothes, and figured out how to apply for college from the public library computers because the deadlines had slipped everyone's mind. My father, Arthur, ran a small hardware supply shop. He talked about it like it was a cornerstone of the community. In reality, it was a struggling operation in a rented space with unreliable employees. My mother, Evelyn, was the keeper of the peace. She managed the household by ensuring everyone else was comfortable, a role that often meant directing any tension my way. Chloe, 5 years younger, was effortlessly charming and possessed a genuine belief that the universe revolved around her. It wasn't malevolence, it was a deep-seated conviction that she was simply the main character. I remember one Christmas when I was about 12. Chloe had received a new bicycle, the one she'd been begging for, with a big red bow on the handlebars. I had received a sweater from the discount store, 2 sizes too big, in a color I'd never wear. My mother said it was because I was hard to shop for. But I knew the truth. I knew I was easy to overlook. That bicycle became a symbol of everything I'd never have in that house. The attention, the affection, the feeling of being seen. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need those things, but somewhere deep inside, that little girl was still waiting for someone to notice her. I left for university at 18 with a modest scholarship and a small savings account I'd built from my own earnings. No one helped me pack or move into the dorms. I didn't expect them to. I had learned that expectations were just premeditated disappointments. The day I left, my father was at work. My mother was too emotional to see me off, so I took a bus to the campus, carrying 2 suitcases and a heart full of determination. I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to. Those first few years were hard. I worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining my grades. I remember studying in the library until 2, and because I didn't have a quiet place to focus in my shared apartment. I remember eating ramen noodles for weeks at a time because my paycheck was late. But I also remember the pride I felt when I got my first A in a difficult class. I remember the satisfaction of paying my own bills. I was building something, brick by brick, and no one could take that away from me. 7 years ago, at 27, I landed my dream role in London. It was a senior analyst position, the kind of work where you spot the gotcha clauses before they become a disaster. I was good at it. I'd been trained for it from birth, learning to read between the lines of every unspoken rule in my family. I bought a small, modern apartment in Canary Wharf with my own money. It was mine. Every square foot was a testament to a life I'd built without a single safety net. I hadn't left my family behind. I'd finally caught up to the place in their lives where I'd always existed, on the periphery. I decorated that apartment with care. A comfortable sofa, a desk by the window where I could see the river, a bookshelf filled with the books I'd always wanted to read. It was a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe. I'd call my mother occasionally just to check in. The conversations were always brief. She'd ask about my job, my apartment, whether I'd met anyone. But she never asked how I was really doing. She never asked if I was happy. I'd stopped expecting that a long time ago. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in late September, a heavy, cream-colored envelope with an elegant return address. I recognized the feel of expensive cardstock. Someone had gone to great lengths to look the part. Inside was a formal invitation to the wedding of Chloe Sinclair and Mark Ashton, held at the prestigious Ashford Estate in our hometown on December 15th. Black tie optional. I looked up the venue. It was a sprawling, restored manor with manicured gardens and a price tag that started in the tens of thousands. For a family that couldn't afford to fix the roof on the hardware store, this was a staggering reach. What were they trying to prove? Who were they trying to impress? I couldn't reconcile the struggling business I knew with this lavish display of wealth. What stopped me wasn't the venue, but the note Chloe had included. A separate card in her looping handwriting, pleading with me, "It wouldn't be the same without you. Please come." C. 7 years. 7 years, and the only calls I'd received were for favors. A co-signer question from my father, quickly dropped. An opinion on a medical bill from my mother. Chloe called on birthdays, and sometimes we exchanged a group text at Christmas. I'd send birthday gifts to Chloe, carefully chosen, always acknowledged with a quick text. But the reciprocity was never there. I'd given up, expecting it. And now this. A sincere sounding note. A request that felt, for a fleeting moment, like it might be genuine. I read that note a dozen times. I looked for any sign of manipulation, any hidden agenda, but all I saw were words that sounded like they came from a sister who missed me. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that people could change, that family could heal. I should have known better. I booked the flight that weekend, London to Charlotte. Economy class. I told myself I wasn't going because I'd forgiven anything. I told myself I was going to satisfy a burning curiosity. There's a profound difference between absolution and curiosity. I was clinging to the latter, using it as a shield against the possibility of more disappointment. My best friend Maya from university texted me when I told her, "Are you seriously going back? That's a choice." I should have paid more attention to the subtext in her tone. Maya had seen me through every disappointment, every broken promise. She'd been the one to pick up the pieces when I'd called her crying after my parents forgot my graduation. She knew the history. She knew the patterns. But she also knew I had to make this decision for myself. The flight was long and unsettling. I spent most of it trying to convince myself that this time would be different. I watched 2 movies, read a book, and still had hours to go. The woman next to me was traveling to visit her grandchildren. She showed me photos, told me stories about her family. I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt a familiar ache. I didn't have stories like that. I had stories of being left out, overlooked, forgotten. I wondered what it would feel like to have a family that celebrated you, that showed up for you, that loved you without conditions. I landed in December, a Friday evening. The air in Charlotte smelled different, like pine and fast food. It felt familiar, yet foreign. I rented a car and drove to a modest hotel in the University District. I never stayed at my parents' house when I visited. That was a policy I'd implemented years ago, and no one ever questioned it. The hotel room was clean, anonymous, a place to sleep, nothing more. From the sterile hotel room, I called Chloe. It rang 5 times before she answered, her voice a little too bright. "Hey, you made it. Awesome." She chirped. I could hear noise in the background, laughter, glasses clinking. A party. Just checked in. Is there anything I should know for tomorrow? Just be at the venue by 2. The ceremony starts at 3. Her voice had that clipped, distracted quality, like she was in a room full of people she'd rather be talking to. "Gotta go. Rehearsal stuff. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow," I said, but she'd already hung up. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being managed rather than welcomed. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the phone. Something was off. I could feel it in my gut, that old familiar warning signal. I called my mother next. Evelyn picked up on the second ring, and her first words landed like a stone sinking into still water. "Oh, you actually came?" There was no warmth, no welcome, just a tone of mild astonishment. I thought, well, the flight is so long, I figured you'd change your mind. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my suitcase still upright by the door, and let that sink in. She never said she was glad. She never said she'd see me tomorrow. She just said she thought I wouldn't show up. Something was off. A wrong note in a melody I'd known my whole life. I didn't sleep well that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the phone calls in my head. Something about Chloe's voice, about my mother's surprise, felt wrong. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself this was just anxiety, the old familiar fear of rejection creeping back in. But deep down, I knew something was coming. I just didn't know what. The next day, Saturday, December 15th. I dressed carefully, a dark green silk dress, simple gold earrings, professional and understated. I wanted to look like I belonged, without trying too hard to prove it. The Ashford estate was a vision. The long gravel drive was illuminated by fairy lights, and the sound of a string quartet floated out over the hedges. It looked like something from a movie, impossibly beautiful, impossibly perfect. And there, standing at the entrance, was my father. Not inside greeting guests, not at the altar. He was standing on the gravel with his hands in his pockets, next to a pristine, leased luxury SUV. He saw me approach and stepped forward, his expression fixed. "Alara, you have to leave." He said it flatly, without emotion. "Only immediate family is allowed in the main house. You weren't invited." I stopped walking, my heels sinking slightly into the gravel. "Excuse me?" I said, holding up the invitation. "Dad, I have the invitation right here." "That was a mistake," he said, his gaze sliding past me. "You shouldn't have come." I looked past his shoulder. Through the glass doors, I could see Chloe in her white gown laughing with her bridesmaids. My mother stood just inside, watching us through the window. She didn't come outside. She didn't wave. She just stood there like a statue, a silent witness to my humiliation. "Dad, don't make a scene." "The guests are inside," I said, trying to control my voice. I could feel my face flushing, the heat of embarrassment spreading across my cheeks. I'd been so foolish, so naive. "Walk away, Alara. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't beg. I didn't cry. Not in front of him. I turned around, my dress swishing against my legs, and walked back to the rental car, the gravel crunching loudly under my feet. I didn't cry until the doors were locked and the engine was running. And even then, I didn't cry for the wedding. I cried because I'd let myself hope. I'd let myself believe that this time would be different. And I'd been wrong. Back at the hotel, I sat in the dark room, my shoes still on, staring at the muted television for what felt like hours. The room smelled like carpet cleaner. I called Maya at 8 p.m., my voice trembling. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She just listened. When I was done, she was quiet for a moment. "Something about this doesn't add up," she said, her voice sharp. "They send you an invitation. Chloe writes you a personal note. You fly 18 hours and they turn you away at the door? People don't do that unless they need something from you, or they're hiding something. Was it possible this whole thing was a setup?" I started to argue, to say my family was perfectly capable of casual cruelty, but she stopped me. "Wait, stay there. Something's going to happen. I can feel it." I didn't believe her. I pulled up the British Airways site on my laptop. Row 34A. The change fee was $260. My finger hovered over the confirm button. I didn't click it. Maybe, somewhere deep down, I could feel it too. Something was unfinished. Something was coming. 3 days passed. Nothing, no calls from my parents, no texts from Chloe. I stayed in that room, working remotely. I reviewed audit files, answered emails, went through the motions of a normal life, but I felt hollow, empty, like a shell of myself. Monday, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. Chloe's feed was a masterpiece of curated joy. Photos of the golden hour ceremony, the towering white rose arch, the 5-tier cake, hashtags like best day ever, and #Ashton wedding. Hundreds of photos, and not one of me. Not one mention, as if I'd never existed, as if I hadn't flown 18 hours or stood on that gravel drive. Then I saw my mother's post. A collage. Chloe as a baby, Chloe at prom, Chloe with Arthur at the altar, and at the bottom, a photo of us as kids, maybe 6 and 2, sitting on the porch. The caption read, "So proud of both my girls." I stared at that word, both, until it lost all meaning. She'd posted both my girls for the audience, for the narrative. She couldn't explain why one was missing, so she reached a decade into the past for proof of an inclusion that no longer existed. It was a lie, a carefully crafted illusion, and I was the one paying the price. I closed the app, shut the laptop, and ate vending machine crackers for dinner. The performance was all that mattered to them. The appearance of a happy family, the illusion of love, the spectacle of success. I was just a loose thread they'd snipped away. Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 9:15. It was my mother. "Mom?" I answered. "Alara." Her voice was stripped of all warmth. "We need to discuss the bill for the estate. The total is $38,000. How will you be paying?" I sat up straighter, a cold feeling washing over me. "What are you talking about? I didn't hire a venue. You signed the contract, Alara. You're the guarantor. Your name is on the agreement." The room tilted. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even been told there was a contract. "I never signed a single document for that wedding," I said, my voice rising. I could feel the blood draining from my face, shuffling on the other end. Then my father's voice, hard and close. He'd taken the phone. "Don't play dumb, Alara. Your name is on that contract. You're the guarantor. You owe this family." "I owe this family for a wedding you kicked me out of?" "We'll talk about that later. Right now, you need to handle the bill. Just pay it." "Dad, I didn't sign anything." "Then who did?" "A ghost?" He scoffed and hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding, a ringing in my ears. My signature. I read contracts for a living. I knew exactly what a forged signature meant. That was the moment the hurt stopped, and the cold, analytical part of my brain took over. I'd been a victim. Now I was going to be a detective. I called the Ashford estate at 10:30 that morning. I spoke to the event coordinator, a professional woman named Susan. "I'm calling about the Sinclair Ashton wedding," I said calmly. "My name is Alara Sinclair, and I understand there's a guarantor agreement with my name on it." I did not sign that document. There was a long pause. "Miss Sinclair, can you repeat that? I am telling you that I never signed a guarantor agreement for this wedding. I request a copy of the document." She seemed uneasy. "Ma'am, if what you're saying is accurate, this would be a serious matter for our legal department. I'll need you to submit a formal written request and a copy of your government-issued ID." I sent the request within the hour. My passport photo and signature were on file. Then I called Maya. "It's real," I said. "There's a contract with my name on it, and I never signed it." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Okay. Now we work." I could hear her shifting into paralegal mode, the familiar efficiency I'd always admired. She was going to help me fight this. The call started Wednesday. My aunt, my uncle, my cousins, they all had the same story. My mother was beside herself. They said I'd promised to cover the venue and was now backing out. "Think about your parents' health, honey," my aunt said in a rehearsed tone. "Your mother's been having chest pains." I wanted to scream, but I recognized the script. Evelyn had already set the stage. I screenshot every message, every voicemail, every email. I was building a case, piece by piece. Then my phone buzzed with a text from a number I almost didn't recognize. My cousin Derek. "Hey, something's off. Mom keeps saying you promised, but I don't think that's the whole story. Want to talk?" One person out of 23. One person who thought to ask. It felt like a single candle in a vast, dark room. I saved the message. Paige called on Thursday. "Alara," she said flatly, "you need to just pay the bill. You make good money. $38,000 isn't that much for you. You kicked me out of your wedding, Chloe, and now you want me to pay for it? That was Dad's decision. I didn't want to, but you didn't stop him either," she deflected. "Look, Dad handled the contract. It's done. Just pay the bill and we can move on." "I never signed anything." "Whatever, Dad handled it. Just write the check and stop being dramatic. You can afford it." I leaned back and closed my eyes. $38,000 for a wedding where I wasn't allowed past the gravel. "Chloe, can you say one honest thing to me? Did you know Dad put my name on that contract?" The silence lasted 5 seconds. A canyon. "It doesn't matter," she said finally. "You left this family, Alara. You moved to London and disappeared. You don't get to come back and play victim." I ended the call and set the phone down. My hands were steady, not because I was calm, but because something inside me had shifted. She knew. She'd known the whole time. And she didn't care. What would you do if your own sibling said that to you? If your own sister told you that your pain didn't matter, that your boundaries were just drama, that your success was a reason to make you pay? My father called again Friday morning. His voice was sharp, rehearsed. I spoke to a buddy who knows contracts. He says the guarantor agreement is binding. You have 30 days to pay. Did your buddy also mention what happens if the signature was forged? Dead air. He was silent before he said a single word. That silence told me everything. He erupted. "You think you're so smart with your fancy London job?" Nobody forged anything, but he never denied it. He deflected, he threatened, he attacked, but he never denied it. That was the crack in his armor, the one I needed. The venue's legal team finally responded. "Upon preliminary review, we are initiating a signature verification process. All collection activity directed at you has been suspended." I forwarded the email to Maya. They wouldn't suspend collection unless they saw a discrepancy. "This is real," she said. "They believe you." Then, an email from Susan, the event coordinator. It was sent from her personal account. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I was the one who processed the original paperwork. The person who dropped off the signed form was an older gentleman. He submitted it at the front desk and signed it while standing there. He seemed very rushed. An older gentleman. My father. He walked into that venue, picked up a pen, and wrote my name as though it belonged to him, as though I belonged to him, as though my name, my identity, my credit was his to use. I printed the email. I now had a contract copy, the venue's investigation letter, Susan's statement, and my passport signature page. 4 documents, a folder full of truth. Sunday arrived. The intervention was set for my aunt's house at noon. I chose a simple white blouse, a navy blazer, and dark trousers. Professional, the outfit of someone delivering facts, not feelings. The manila folder went into my leather satchel. I sat in the rental car for a full minute, hands on the wheel. 15 people inside. Most of them had already made up their minds. The wealthy, heartless sister who broke a promise. The selfish daughter who chose money over family. They had built a version of me that didn't exist, and they were about to deliver the verdict. I looked at the folder on the passenger seat. One truth. I got out of the car and walked up the front steps. The room was heavy with anticipation. The smell of coffee and pastries did nothing to mask the tension. My father stood at the head of the table, his posture that of a man who believes he owns every room. "Thank you all for coming," he announced, his tone grandiose. "We're here because of a difficult situation. Alara made a commitment to help with the wedding, and she's now refusing to honor it." He spoke as if he were delivering a verdict. My aunt chimed in, "Alara, we've always thought of you as the responsible one. Just do the right thing." My uncle added, "Your parents could lose their home over this. Is that really what you want?" Through it all, I watched Mark, Chloe's husband. He was leaning back in his chair, looking from Arthur to Evelyn to Chloe, with an expression I recognized. The expression of someone hearing a story for the first time and realizing it doesn't align with the one he was told. He leaned toward Chloe and whispered just loud enough for me to catch, "What contract?" Chloe put a hand on his arm. "Shh, I'll explain later." Art, emboldened by the room's support, turned to me with a triumphant sneer. "See, even your family agrees. We have the contract. You signed it." 15 faces, 14 of them waiting for me to break. One of them, Derek, at the corner of the table, watched me with quiet attention. I looked at my father, held his gaze. Then I stood up. The chair scraped the hardwood. "I've been listening," I said, my voice calm. "Now it's my turn." I opened my satchel and placed the first document in the center of the table. "This is the contract everyone's been talking about. My name is on it." I pointed to the signature line. "But that is not my signature." Then I placed my passport beside it, open to the photo page. "This is my actual signature. Look at them side by side." My aunt reached for the contract first. She squinted, looking from one to the other. My uncle leaned in. My cousin set down her phone. The signatures weren't close. Not when you actually looked. "I have a letter from the venue," I continued, placing a second document on the table. "They are investigating a forgery. They have suspended all collection activity against me." My father's face went pale. "That's ridiculous. You signed it over the phone." "Arthur," I said, using his first name for the first time in years. The venue's event coordinator confirmed an older gentleman submitted this form in person and signed it at the front desk. The room processed that sentence. I watched it land on my aunt's face, my uncle's. I watched my mother look at her hands. I watched Mark, who had gone still, staring at his wife. My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, I watched my father have nothing to say. No bluster, no excuses, just silence. My uncle turned to him, his voice flat. "Arthur, is this true? Did you sign her name?" "It was for the family. We had no other option." My father stammered. "Our credit was ruined. The venue required a guarantor. You committed forgery." My uncle shouted, rising from his chair. "On your own daughter's name. Do you understand that's a felony?" My mother started crying. We were desperate. You don't know what it's been like. At the far end of the table, Mark pushed his chair back. "Wait, you told me your parents were paying for the venue. You told me Alara was just helping with the flowers." He shouted at Chloe. Chloe reached for his hand. "Mark, sit down. You knew?" His voice was low and dangerous. "You knew your father forged your sister's name, and you said nothing?" It was complicated, Chloe whispered. It's a crime, Chloe. It's not complicated. It's a crime. The room was chaos. Voices overlapping, my mother crying. My uncle demanding answers, Mark staring at Chloe like he'd never seen her before. I raised one hand. The room fell silent. I'm not done, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm not pressing charges. That's not why I'm here. But I want everyone in this room to understand 3 things. I held up one finger. I never signed that contract. I have 0 legal or moral obligation to pay a single dollar. A second finger. I flew 18 hours to be at that wedding. I had an invitation in my hand, and I was turned away at the door by the same person who forged my name because he was afraid I'd find out. A third finger. I don't hate anyone in this room, but I will not carry debts that were never mine, and I will not apologize for refusing. My mother sobbed, Alara, please. I looked her in the eye. I'm done being the person you call only when you need something signed or paid or blamed. Kindness isn't a contract, and family isn't a blank check. I gathered my documents slowly, deliberately, and placed them back in the satchel. I walked past the table, past the pastries and the coffee and the stunned silence. Derek met my eyes as I passed. He gave a small, respectful nod. I walked out the front door and into the thin December light. Nobody followed me. But this time, the silence felt different. It wasn't rejection. It felt like respect. It felt like victory. I was halfway to the car when I heard them through the open dining room window. Mark's voice, tight and controlled. You lied to me about the money. You lied about your sister. What else did you lie about, Chloe? Strength isn't carrying everyone's weight. It's knowing which burdens are yours to put down. Monday morning, I was at the hotel lobby checking out when the email arrived. Following our investigation, including handwriting comparison, we have determined the signature does not match the verified signature of Alara Sinclair. The guarantor agreement is hereby voided in its entirety. All financial liability reverts to the primary contracting parties. I read it standing at the counter. Voided, the word felt like a key unlocking a door. I called Maya. It's done. All of it. Voided? All of it. Liability reverted to Arthur and Evelyn. She let out a breath. You owe nothing. I owe nothing, I repeated. The words tasted like freedom. A second email arrived, a revised invoice sent to my parents with a 60-day deadline. I was CC'd. I could almost hear my father's sputtering, my mother's tears. But I didn't feel sorry for them. I felt something else. Relief and a little bit of sadness. I got into my rental car and drove to the airport. The 18-hour flight home was the longest sleep I'd had in weeks. I dreamed of nothing. I woke up feeling lighter, as if a weight I'd been carrying my whole life had finally been lifted. 3 days later, Chloe called. She sounded small, her bravado gone. Mark canceled the honeymoon, she said. He says he can't trust me. He wants me to use the deposit to help pay for the venue. Are you going to? A pause. I think I have to. Athena, could you talk to him? Tell him I'm not a bad person? No, Chloe, I said, my voice firm but not cruel. That's your marriage. Those are your words to find. I can't be your bridge. Not when you're the one who burned ours. She was crying now, real tears. The kind that come when you've run out of angles. I was wrong, she said. I know I was wrong. Knowing isn't the same as fixing it. How do I fix it? Start with the truth. With Mark. With yourself. Stop treating other people like resources you're entitled to. The call ended a minute later. No resolution, no group hug, just 2 sisters separated by an ocean and a forgery, and the distance that honesty creates before it heals. My father called on a Thursday. The man who called wasn't the man I remembered. His voice was exhausted, stripped of authority. "The venue is suing us," he said. "I'm going to have to sell the truck and some of the inventory. You put yourself in this position." I know. 2 simple words. No deflection. I thought you'd just pay. I thought that's what you do. I thought because you had the money, because I've always handled things quietly and gone back to London, I finished for him. Yes, there was a long pause. There's something else. I also signed your name on the table and chair rental. Another $4,500. Dad, I'm not going to lecture you. The venue voided the contract. I'm out. The consequences are yours. I'm sorry, Alara, I hear you. But sorry doesn't erase a forged signature. And it doesn't erase being told I'm not family at my own sister's wedding. He was quiet for a long time. I know, he said again, and hung up. A week later, apologies started trickling in from my extended family. My aunt texted, "I should have asked for your side. I'm so sorry." My uncle followed with a short email, "I was wrong." Derek called. "You're the strongest person I know." I read each message on a bench near the river, but nothing from my parents, nothing from Chloe. The 3 people who actually owed me the words. Winning didn't feel the way I'd imagined. It felt like cleaning out a wound. Necessary, but it still stings. 3 months later, life had shifted. The wedding debt was a weight my parents were now carrying. My father sold the truck he'd leased for the wedding. My mother got a part-time job at a grocery store. Chloe and Mark were still together, but the honeymoon was gone. They were in counseling, and Chloe had surrendered the deposit. The family dynamic had changed. They were no longer performing for me. A letter arrived from my mother in March. It was short, 1 page. I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm learning what it means to earn a relationship instead of demanding one. I set the letter on my kitchen table. I didn't write back, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't ready. And for the first time, I let that be enough. I let my own timeline matter. London carried on. I went to work. I caught discrepancies. I read contracts. But something had shifted. I started saying yes to dinners, to weekend trips. I'd confused self-reliance with isolation. I'd built a life that was clean and ordered and entirely mine. And somewhere along the way, mine had started to mean alone. The trip to Charlotte didn't fix that, but it cracked the wall enough to let the light in. In May, I called Chloe. It was a short call. No mention of the contract, the venue, or the $38,000. No apologies. No accusations. Just 2 sisters talking for the first time in a way that didn't have an agenda underneath it. "How's work?" she asked. "Busy, good. How's Mark?" "We're working on it. Counseling helps." "Good, Alara?" "Yeah? I'm glad you called." That was all. No grand reconciliation. Just a door left open. Not because anyone had earned it yet, but because keeping it shut was costing me more than I realized. Strength isn't about carrying everyone's weight. It's about knowing which burdens are yours and putting down the ones that aren't. I'd put mine down, and my hands were finally free. It's evening in London now. The sky over Canary Wharf is that particular shade of blue it gets in late spring. Deep at the edges, pale gold where the city lights meet the river. I'm sitting at the window with a cup of lukewarm Earl Grey. I think about that day sometimes. The gravel path. The string quartet. The doors I wasn't allowed to enter. Leave. Only family is allowed. In a way, he was right. Only family was allowed. The problem was he'd forgotten who his family actually was. He forgot that family isn't a performance. It isn't a contract you sign with someone else's hand. It isn't a bill you slide across a table. Family is the people who show up, not because they owe you, but because they choose to. It's Maya, who brought cold coffee to a hotel room and told me to close the laptop. It's Derek, who sent a screenshot that changed everything. It's the version of Chloe who called in May and meant it. I look at my passport on the shelf. The signature inside is mine. Clean, certain, unforged. My name is Alara Sinclair. I'm 33 years old. I work in risk analysis. I live alone in a flat by the river. And I'm learning, still learning. That saying no to what hurts you is the same thing as saying yes to who you are. Nobody signs my name but me. And that's enough. That's finally enough. That's my story. And if you're still here, thank you. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. What's a boundary you've had to set, even when it cost you something? Or have you ever been the family ATM? The one everyone calls when they need something, but never when they don't? If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought. Your support helps me share more stories just like this one.